Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Elinor Shapiro. Hey, Elinor, how are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on the show. So I'd like to start by showing some work of yours, if that's okay.
Sounds great.
Let's just share the screen here for a second. Okay, so I went online and I chose a few pieces of yours, sort of at not at random, but things that sort of stuck out with me. And so I just wanted to share a few of these so people will get an idea of the kind of work that you do. Now, I have a feeling that a lot of these pieces that I'm showing are a little bit older, especially since the work behind you doesn't look like anything I've seen on this. But that's okay. I'm just as interested in these. Can you tell me a little bit about this particular piece?
So this piece was a kind of an experiment. My favorite colors to work with are primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. And I really wanted to experiment with more subtlety and colors that I'm just not comfortable with.
Hmm?
So I went with this sort of magenta purple. It's a simpler self-portrait. Um, and from there, I also was playing with the uses of chalk mixed with oil paint. So the background, especially, you have those patterns in the wallpaper, which were done with red chalk on a black base. And the only paint on the background is white in color. So all the variation in pigments comes from the chalk and just sort of mixing and getting things muddy and messy.
So I'm curious. So this is an oil with a chalk mixed in.
Hmm.
Do you varnish or seal your pictures?
I tend to, yeah.
Okay. Right, interesting. And not every artist I talk to varnishes at all. So it was
Well,
quite an
when you
extraordinary piece. I really like the values that you were able to use in this, and it had such a somber quality to it. It sort of stuck out. But I will say that this particular piece I found on your website, I think this is one of your most outstanding paintings.
Thank
Um,
you. This is one of my more recent ones.
is it? Okay.
Yes.
That explains the quality of the shadowing, and it's very tight. I was
Hmm.
thrilled to see this. So what's I mean, aside from the 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 atmosphere that's in it, can you tell me a little bit about the figures in the background? Where do they come from? What is that about?
So a lot of my work is in a sense abstracted self-portraits. They're not quite literally me, but they're very much based on my emotion. So there's some sort of mirror for myself. And I work a lot with kind of these ideas of conflicting emotions, what's going on in the mind. And so, in a sense, every face that you see in this painting is a self portrait, but also how they interact with the figure herself.
Is this life size?
No, it was a very small painting.
Do you enjoy painting smaller?
It's a hard question because I love painting really, really big.
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm experimenting with painting smaller.
Okay. I mean, it does have a completely different um, reaction to the audiences because you're forcing the audience to come up close. It's a very intimate kind of a thing. So that to me, this picture seems extremely personal.
Yeah. I
Okay.
guess in size it also kind of does that when you have to look so
Yeah.
closely.
Is there a story behind this?
Um, to be honest, I'm still figuring it out. Painting for
Okay.
me is very much like therapy, so
Okay.
it takes a while.
How often do your pictures reveal themselves later? Do they usually all do that?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I
here's a
figure it out eventually.
eventually. So this is, on your website. It's great to talk about scale with this particular picture, but I'm guessing that even this photo is a little bit older because of the work that's in this.
Yeah, that would be at the start of the pandemic.
Oh, okay. What did the pandemic do to you?
Um, it was actually, I'm one of the lucky ones. It was probably the best thing that could have happened to me.
Oh, yeah.
I was in France, working at an art residency at the time, director of an art residency. But because of the pandemic, nobody could come. So I had about 6 months of complete alone just to be in my studio.
Were you stuck there?
Yeah, but I wasn't trying to leave.
Okay, yeah. Funny enough, you're the second artist I've spoken with that got stuck overseas, and it really worked out well for them. That's great. And then this piece I thought was very poignant. Again, you're using oils?
A mixture of oils and charcoal.
Okay. Well, of course, for the you use the charcoal for just the pentimenti, the underdrawing, or are you
Uh,
actively mixing that on in your
both.
line?
I'm mixing it in to dirty the pigment of the oil as well.
Oh, okay. So are you instead of a stick, are you like scraping it down into a powder form?
No, I'm just going in with the stick, and
Okay.
I made this one in when I was in Colombia. So after the pandemic, I moved to New York for a little while, and then began traveling the world. And it was a struggle for me because I didn't have access to my studio. So
Mm,
this was the first smaller painting I kind of ever did.
mm. I enjoy the brushwork and some of the scumbling. I am curious though these patterns because you do have quite a few patterns that you sort of slide into the picture, usually behind figures. Does is this pattern coming from somewhere or is it just invented?
A combination of both. Sometimes I like looking around the room and just zooming in super closely to the edge of a table or to the corner of a book and abstracting it into a pattern.
Nice, very nice. Well, I'm in luck because I do have a bunch of technical questions I wanted to ask you after looking at your work. But I want to start first at the beginning. When did your art career start? At what point did you say, okay, I'm an artist now?
Day one, I I had
From
a real
birth?
affinity. Yeah, basically, I loved art and drawing from the very beginning of my life, and I had parents who adored art just as much as me. And in some ways, I explain it to people that my dad was with art the way some parents are with academics. So I was in my first art class at age 3, and I loved it.
Okay. So ever since then, so you were always encouraged to be in art. And did you end up going to art school?
Sort of. I went to a state university and majored in art and eventually dropped out.
Okay. All right. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is aside from painting and drawing, have you ever been trained or experimented with other mediums as well?
Yeah, just about everything I can get my hands on.
Really? So printmaking or sculpture, photography,
Yeah, I did a lot of printmaking in university because I knew I wouldn't get easy access to the equipment.
right?
Um, ceramics. I'm actually teaching myself the lost wax method for
Okay.
jewelry making right now.
All right. So you got your fingers in a bunch of different things that you're doing.
I
Do
always
you
come back to painting.
I love painting, so I totally get it. Are you the kind of artist who is working on multiple projects at the same time?
Yes, but not so many. I like having a rotation of paintings so that if
Okay.
one is too wet to work on, I can
Oh,
swap.
okay. So I want to talk a little bit about your process. Because I think that's going to be a fascinating conversation. The first question I have is do you keep sketchbooks? Do you sketch
Yes.
out do you sketch out your works ahead of time?
No.
Okay. So the sketchbook is just like a way to get stuff out.
Yeah, I sometimes just need a place that is art vomit, essentially.
Hmm.
Just whatever
Is
I feel like.
is it often indecipherable to anybody but you?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So you do a lot of figurative work. So I'm curious, do you ever work from models or maquettes or anything, or is it always just invented?
Um, I you I like doing figure drawing workshops, just being able to go and look at models and work from there. I take a lot of photos of myself and sometimes of friends to help with lighting.
Okay. So it's wherever you can get it. So do you do that when you have a painting that you're working on, or is it just you have a lots of this aside for later use?
It's when I have a specific painting and a specific pose that I want.
So you sit down, you're going to make something new. I'm curious, how does your creative process work? Do you plan out your pictures to the nth degree, or do you leave room for experimentation and changes?
So with most of the work that we just looked at, it was pure impulsive. I liked going in with a stick of charcoal and just sort of building the form out of line, just feeling out the shapes and um, kind of just seeing where it goes. With this body of work, it's much more meticulous.
Okay, I felt a butt coming in there. So 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 you've changed your process.
Yes.
Okay. So how do you feel that your process overall has changed over the years?
I used to just sort of wing it consistently through the entire process of the painting.
Uh-huh.
Um, right now, I'm really trying to improve on things that I know I need to learn more about, but I want to get back to just pure impulsive after I've practiced certain skills.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah, to bring that one back into the other. So if you're making work, do you ever find yourself do you ever find yourself destroying older works or reworking them? Or once,
Reworking, yes.
yeah, but not destroying?
Yeah, 'cause sometimes with impulsive painting, you get kind of stumped and you just have to leave it up for 3 months or roll it up and not look at it and come back to it to kind of figure out where it's going. Um, but I remember my dad telling me when I was very young, don't throw anything away, don't destroy anything
Hmm.
because you can look back on it.
Hmm. Hmm. But doesn't photography really eliminate the need anymore to actually keep hold of physical things?
Yes, probably. But then I'd have a whole nother room in my apartment if I took that approach.
Yeah. I'm running out of space. That's the only reason I ask. So I think it's fantastic that that photography's allowed us to do that. I want to know where you kind of get your ideas from. What sparks your creativity? And let me give you an example. I've got artists who will say, "Well, I need to go out into nature to get my creative juices flowing." Somebody else might say, "Well, for me, it's all about reading literature. That's what gets me going." So, what is it that sparks your creativity?
Um, for me, it's human psychology. I went to a special ed school growing up for about, I think it was 7 years of my life, which was both the best thing that ever happened to me and one of the most traumatic. Everybody there was very intense in a lot of different ways, and it was really confronting dealing with so many different, essentially psychological conditions all in the same room. Um, but also for myself and what I was going through, and that just sort of led to this fascination of the human psyche and how people interact and don't interact and forms of communication. There was a lot of students with autism at this school. So just sort of learning to understand everybody's unique, whether you're quote unquote diagnosed or not, everybody has a unique form of communicating with others.
So,
And
does that?
also, sorry,
No, go ahead. I'm fascinated by
and
that.
also like how all the multiple facets of myself communicate with each other.
So does if the question was really starting on what sparks your creativity, does that mean that it's are you seeing or witnessing uh people's interactions and that's what sparks your interest to make something, or is it your own interactions with other people, or
It's
are
a
you studying?
combination of both.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Do you at all consider your works to be autobiographical?
Yes.
So that are they 100% autobiographical?
Um, I would say not, because I also don't like to tell people this piece means this. I like people to get their own response from it,
Okay,
um, their own message. So it can kind of be anything, but for me, it is.
it is. Let's talk a minute about your titles.
Oh
So,
gosh.
yeah, titled them. So, I'm curious. Well, the first question I really have is, do your titles, do they come before, during, or after creation?
Usually after.
Usually after. And are your titles meant to enhance the picture and make people think a certain way, or do you not put that much thought and it just happens whatever pops into your head?
Generally, whatever pops into my head. I don't like
Okay.
to outline the piece too much in the title because it can limit what people get from it.
Have you ever retitled stuff?
Oh yeah, I'll forget what I titled something 6 months ago and it'll just have a new title.
Fantastic. You're just like the rest of us. um, I'm curious to know, I want you to tell me a little bit about color. Tell me what you think about color.
About color?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a broad question.
Yeah, it is. So what pops into your head when you think about color? What do you
That I probably need to get better at mixing it.
So, do you use color at all for, say, emotion, or is it just the aesthetic value of color? Is it experimentation with color? Is it all the above?
Ah, it's probably all the above. I'm very impulsive with it generally.
All right.
So I don't quite know. I don't think too much about it. I just sort of go, I need red.
Okay.
Great.
All
There you
right.
go.
You talk. Your work has a lot of connections to emotions. Is there an overall feeling that you want your audience to get when looking at your work? Or do you not even care about the audience when you're making the work?
I don't think about the audience all that much. There is some part of the one thing I think about with it is to try and not go too dark with it.
Okay.
Um, I've made pieces purely for myself in the past that are just simply kind of too dark to deal with trying to push to the audience. But for the most part, it's purely about me. Like all
Okay.
artists, it's all about me.
There you go. That's been. uh, I'm just curious because so much of your work that I looked at least the things that I saw, were even the titles were in some way connected to an emotion, and I didn't know if that was something that was um, if there was a reason for that, or if you didn't even recognize that.
It's mostly because the paintings all come from emotion for me.
Okay, it makes sense. How often are you in your studio?
Well, at the moment, my studio is my living room.
Okay.
So even if I'm not working, I'm in here every day.
All right. Well, let me rephrase that. How often are you working in your studio?
Um, I would say on average every other day, but it's not always lumped like that. Sometimes it's a solid 4 days of hardcore working and then 4 days of kind of just taking a break from it. It varies.
Okay. And have you ever gone long stretches without working?
Yes,
How does that make you feel?
miserable.
I had a feeling. So, do you often get out of your studio? Are you going to, say, art shows or museums or anything like that?
Not as much as I should, but now that I've moved to Amsterdam, I really enjoy going to look at the old masters and study what they're doing. Um,
Does that kind of thing, do you find that it then works its way into your work?
Generally, it's the other way around. I have something that I'm really trying to figure out. So I go to the museum, and I'll scan the room and say, okay, that painting has drapery of white fabric. That painting has drapery of white fabric, and I go and I study those ones.
So it's research.
Yes.
Okay. I got it. Do you ever bring a sketchbook when you go to museums?
Yeah.
Okay. Regularly?
No.
Are there other artists that you find yourself always looking at, that you're drawn to, either for research or for just pleasure?
Oh yeah, I mean a zillion, but Caravaggio has been a really big influence in the work that you showed in terms of scale. I
Mm-hmm,
really loved how you'd look at a Caravaggio painting and it felt like you were in the same room.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, Basquiat, all
Wow.
of the Impressionists. I mean, I love so many people.
Caravaggio to Basquiat. Okay, that's
Those are my top two.
that's quite. Do you ever look at sculptors or photographers? Do you have people like that that influence you?
I have sculptors and photographers that I really love, but they don't influence my work the same way. I do look at Roman sculpture sometimes for shadow and anatomical help.
I could see that. Well, I'm looking forward to your next website update. I want to see this new work. Have so we did talk about the fact that you were did some training in printmaking. Um, is that still current? Are you trying to? Do you have resources to make any prints?
No, and it's not something I'm particularly focused on. I really enjoy doing it,
Okay.
but I came back to painting.
Only because some of the pieces that I've seen, and including the pieces that are in your background, would make excellent prints. I would love to see you do that. Have you ever done anything really strange like bookbinding or anything like that?
I have done bookbinding. I
Okay.
made some of my own sketchbooks.
Okay. Boy, a jack of all trades. I get it. I'm there. So you're in your studio or you're in your living room or wherever. Do you have any like is your production the same in that do you have any studio rituals that you do? Like
I
do you
have to have a cup of coffee.
have okay, so the coffee is one. You got to sugar just a cup, not a pot.
No.
Do you need music on? Do you need total silence? Do you need to talk to somebody? How does that work?
I need things going at all times. With the more technical work, I tend to have television shows that I've seen before going. With the impulsive work, music. I have to have music.
Does the type of music you choose influence the works that you make?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So do you feel like you're a sponge? Like you're
Yes.
just taking in everything and then putting it out there? Okay. Uh, I had one more kind of strange question. I wanted to ask you about surrealism because the works that you did make and even the newer pieces, you have like a touch of surrealism in the work, right? Is that a conscious effort? Is it just you being you and it slides out? You're not, or is it your subconscious at all?
I think it's very subconscious, and ironically, surrealism is probably one of my least favorite art movements. I
And
deeply respect it, but I don't particularly like it.
okay. Well, then let me, on the flip side of that, because again, you're not the first artist to tell me that, your work also has sometimes dreamlike qualities. So I'm curious, have you ever, do dreams ever enter your works?
Actually, no. I think a lot of the dreamlike elements come from sort of dissociative anxiety
Hmm.
episodes that I've experienced, particularly in high school, where you feel like you're in a dream, but you're actually in the real world and you're not asleep at all.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I have time for just two more questions. The first one is I see that you do have, new work that's going on there. Are you working now in any kind of series or are all your pictures sort of one-offs?
They're one-offs. It's more that I am trying to keep a cohesive body of work, but each piece is its own.
Okay. Do you have like sort of thematic ideas overall about the works that you're doing?
It's much more of an internal emotional look, so it's no longer about other people and purely what's going on in my own mind.
Okay. All right. I get it. And the last weird technical question is uh, you had mentioned the sketchbooks. Would you ever show your sketchbooks in an exhibit along with your paintings?
Yeah,
All right.
I'm planning to make them into art books.
I want to see those. All right. Time for my final question. Simple question. I ask a lot of artists this. What does making art do for you?
Keeps me alive.
Okay.
I can't imagine I crumble when I'm not making it.
So you foresee yourself making artwork for it's just part and parcel of your life.
I can't not make something.
That's a perfect answer. I like that. Well, I really want to thank you for coming by and talking with me today. It's always a pleasure to talk to like-minded artists. We actually have a lot of similarities in our methodology. So I want to thank you for coming by, and I also want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch Art Show today. Of course, we love it when you like, share, and subscribe. That really helps push Art Show forward. So again, Elinor, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure meeting you today.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.